Yeah, let's go. Oh. Yeah, let's go. Oh. Yeah, let's go. Oh. What? We all know what's coming. Yep, there you go. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. So this is the day after the loss, and you might think that that's why I'm going to be a little downplayed as far as my rage in this video. But the truth is this is how I felt yesterday too. I mean, obviously I'm upset. I'm still feeling the same way that I feel about the owners, about the club being run, how everything's going at the moment. I still feel the same way about it. I'm in this state of it's expected. And so this loss, it doesn't get me enraged anymore because, yeah, this is what I've come to expect. When I saw we were playing a team that's not in the bottom 4 or 5, I knew to expect a loss yesterday because that's where we are right now. And what's really sad about it, too, is the fact that there was something different yesterday compared to what we've seen over the past several run of games. Maresca tried something different. I don't know why. I don't know why he decided to change, but he tried something different, and we saw a little bit of positivity because of that. But at the end of the day, I know where we are right now. I know what we did in January, and I know where this club currently is, what the current goal is, and the current goal is to make money. Not to win anything, not to be in Europe next year, it's to make money. So there's no ambition by the board, by the manager, by the players. There's no ambition at this club. So this one change from Maresca, it's to quiet the fans a little bit. It's to keep them from getting a little too rowdy about his job. It's to make a change to say, hey, look, I tried something. It still didn't work. And the fact of the matter is, yeah, he did try something different. One change was good. The other changes that he made were not good. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I feel like that's kind of where I'm going to be for the next several reviews. Honestly, probably till the end of the season, unless something horrific happens. But Southampton, I expect to beat the teams like Southampton, maybe Leicester as well. Depends, because Leicester's kind of going back and forth as far as whether they want to be good or bad. But Southampton's a team that I expect us to beat. And if we don't, that might be the point whenever I get really, really angry. Because it was one thing to lose against Ipswich because they got a bit of a helping hand from the referee, and they've been kind of a little bit of a wild card this season. Leicester's the same way. You know, they've had a couple of upsets here and there. But Southampton, if you don't win against Southampton at home, then you've really done something wrong. You've really royally screwed up to the point where I will absolutely be livid on the next video. But this is kind of what it's going to be like. I'm not really going to have much of a reaction whenever we lose games because it's what I expect now. Because of the players we have available, the players we don't have available, the manager that we have, and what the board has done to this club. This is what I expect. I expect us to lose to teams like Aston Villa. So with that being said, first of all, let's talk about Maresca, because the changes he made, the one good one was putting Neto up top. I talked about it before. I thought he's a much better false nine than Nkunku is, and he showed it. His work rate, his energy is what we need up there, because Jackson's not available, and there aren't many players that work as hard as Jackson do up there to cause trouble for the defense and to be a nuisance. And the thing is, if you're going to use a false nine, you don't want them to play like a number 9. You don't want them to stay in there in between the two defenders, because that's kind of what Nkunku does. He just sort of stays there, and he's easy to mark out of the game because of that. He doesn't typically move that much. So he's an easy false 9 to play against. Neto is all over the place. He's flying, he's energetic, he's putting pressure on the defense as well. He does what we need a number 9 to do, but he's not a number 9, so obviously there are parts of his game that are not going to be as good as having somebody like Jackson up there. But the other changes, one is not a terrible one, but he did sort of go to a back 5 with Gusto becoming more of a wing back. But the problem with that is that he made Gusto wing back. He didn't really do anything with Cucurella. He just sort of kept Cucurella back as a left back, and it became a back 4 whenever we would get up. And it would be the 4, Cucurella and James, and then Colwill, and started Chalobah, ended with Tosin. I feel like of the two, I mean, that is where Gusto plays better. He had a horrific game, which doesn't help that point at all. But that's typically where he looks better. He looks more comfortable as a wingback rather than an inverted fullback. So the game yesterday, you could say it was more on him that he didn't perform well rather than he was being played out of position. So it's more, in my opinion, on Gusto than it is on Maresca. But Cucurella, he plays wing back pretty well. He does the inverted fullback stuff too, but typically when he's getting down the line, he's causing some trouble. We didn't hardly see him do that, which to me tells me that Maresca said, hey, you need to stay back, which means now all we have over there is the other mistake Maresca made, Nkunku. You took him out of the 9 where he's not comfortable. He doesn't look like a 9. You took him out of there and you put him on the left wing where he still doesn't look comfortable. He is a 10. And granted, he's definitely not in a good run of form. He's definitely at the worst that we've seen him in Chelsea blue by far. Granted, it may not matter where you put him on the field. He may just be this bad consistently because whether the confidence, whether his head's somewhere else, whatever's going on with him, I just don't think he fits into Maresca's system because he's not a Maresca-style player. You know who was? João Felix. Weird, right? That Maresca never played him, even though he perfectly fit for what Maresca wants to do, the high press that he wants to play. And yeah, he never played him, and then he wanted to leave. Weird, right? Maybe we just have an idiot manager too. But yeah, so all we had on the left side was Nkunku, and we didn't have anything on the left side. And even when Sancho came in, Cucurella still wasn't really getting down that left side hardly at all. So you just have one guy out there. Whereas on the right side, you've got Neto would sometimes go over there, Palmer would sometimes go over there, and then you have Gusto coming around on the overlap. And we look so much more dangerous on that side because of it. So I just don't understand why Cucurella wasn't being allowed to get up and down that line as well. It felt very odd. But ultimately, I mean, Maresca he doesn't have answers because he's too young, he's too inexperienced. He might be a great manager one day. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's a trash manager like Graham Potter was and is. But he's not ready to manage a club like Chelsea. The same thing I could say about Frank Lampard. I think Frank could be a pretty solid manager one day. I think he could be a really good mid to European coach at some point. But he was too young when he came in. With Maresca, he needed a lot more experience than just taking Leicester to the top of the championship. He needed a lot more than that. And so now here we are, and he's come under fire. There's a lot of questions about his job, about what he's going to change. And he doesn't have the answers because he's not been in this situation before. He's not been in this high level of pressure before. And I do think he's going to get more time than Potter to try to see if he can turn things around next season, but I don't expect him to. I don't expect him to reach that point next season because he's still going to only be in year 2 of being a Premier League manager. Most Premier League managers that are at the top of the level, they need a lot more experience than that. You know, Arteta, it took him, 3-4 years before he actually got Arsenal to be somewhat competitive in the top 4. I don't see Maresca doing anything for us this year, next year, maybe even year 3. And we don't have that kind of time. Where we are right now, how many players we have that want to be competing at the top level and probably will leave and the board will let them leave if they're not up there. We don't have that kind of time and luxury to just dick around and say, oh, hey, it's okay, Maresca, just get him again next season, bud. But of course, like I said before in the last video, that's that American sports mentality. Oh, you didn't get him this year? It's all right. We got next season. You can't do that when you're not playing sports in America. You just can't. But going on to the players, first of all, Jorgensen in goal once again had another howler because he's not good enough. And I'm not going to sit here and say this vindicates Sanchez because he's terrible too, but this does bring the point that I had been making several times. You got to go with Sanchez because he at least has a bit more experience. He probably makes that final save. He probably makes the save that Matoma had in the first goal of the Brighton match. He probably makes those saves. Does he have some gaffes in his game too? Absolutely. And I'm not defending those. But of the two, between Jorgensen and Sanchez, Sanchez is a better keeper. He just is. I know it's laughable to think, but he is. Ultimately, the big mistake here is we didn't bring Petrovic back from his loan. He should have come back because he's better than Sanchez. I don't even think he's really a world beater, but he's at least a good solid keeper who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He can do his job well enough. He did it last year. So the fact that we loaned him out, we trusted Sanchez to be number one when he's not good enough, and then the backup option is not even a keeper that's better than Sanchez. This is probably the biggest failure that the new transfer team has made. In the defense, Gusto on the right wing back position, pretty bad. Like I said, it's much more he had a really bad game, more so than he's being played out of position at this point. And I don't know why. I don't know if last season was just a false flag and it was just he's young and exciting. And now we're seeing, no, this is the type of player that he actually is. He's just not good enough for Chelsea. Who knows? James at kind of the right center back, right back position, not good enough. Again, very lackadaisical on the ball. Doesn't really do much tracking. As the leader, as the captain on the team, he doesn't really do much either. And it's really funny because there was a lot of talk whenever Maresca made those comments about him needing to step up and be a better leader. A lot of people were saying, whoa, it's kind of harsh. But the fact of the matter is, it's entirely true. And yet, here we are. He's still not been stripped of the captain's armband. He's still not really leading. So what is it? Like one of those, hey, you need to do better. They don't do better. Hey, you need to do better. They don't do better. Hey, you need to do better. They don't do better. All right, well, you know what? Just try to do better. Is that where we're going with this? I almost consider it like weak parenting tactic of telling your kid not to do something and then they do it. And it's like, hey, don't do that again. And then they do it again. Hey, you need to stop doing that. Like, is that where we're going with on this? Telling James to be a better leader. He doesn't improve and we just, hey, he's got to be better. I'm just looking at it and all I can think is we need experience. We need better leaders on the team. We need older leaders on the team because the oldest players we have are not leaders, and they're 26, 27. It's not good enough. Chalobah went out pretty early, and it's disappointing because another player out with injury. This one was not hamstring, so it was not related to anything we're doing on the training pitch because there have been several hamstring injuries, which makes me go, okay, so our medical staff is still trash. Good to know. But ultimately, it is just frustrating, again, that we got rid of all of this depth that we had in January, and we've just encountered so many injuries now and don't have the depth to, I mean, Tosin technically is our depth there, but past Tosin and Colwill, if neither of them are having good games, what do you go with? I guess Achimpong, a little too young. Granted, Disasi's not much better, and I know he's the one that we loaned out, but could have brought in something else in defense. Decided not to. I guess Anselmino is at the club now. I don't know if we're going to try to trust him this early, but like I said, we hamstrung ourselves in January. Go figure. But Colwill and Tosin, once again, just not great defending, not great tracking of runners, too easy to break through our back line and get in behind us. It was a very simple game for Aston Villa whenever they started getting that momentum, as it typically is. I don't get it. I don't get how many times we have to make the same mistakes in defense and we don't learn from them. We just keep doing it. And as many times as I've said it, how do we go from a team that watches tapes to prepare for opposition, to look at probably past mistakes that we made? How do we go from that at the beginning of the season to now it feels like nobody watches tapes? We just break the tapes after the game's over and go, hey, forget about that game. Let's do it again. And then they go out and make the same mistakes again. Why don't you watch the tapes and learn? And then Cucurella on the left side. Like I said, I don't know if it was Maresca or him that just decided he doesn't need to be making so many runs down the field. But that was kind of the one thing about his game that was working pretty well over the past set of matches. The games wherever he's having to defend a lot are the games where he gets exposed for not being a good defender. So this was a game where he defended a lot and he got exposed quite a few times for not being that good of a defender. And again, the fact that he's our only option at left back right now, good confident feeling, isn't it? In fact, for him, what's his motivation to work harder? Oh, you got to be careful or else you're going to have to play more because nobody else can take that position. Into the midfield, Caicedo and Fernandes, kind of the same thing that I said against Brighton, where they both feel like they've lost that connection that we saw in there earlier on this season, that it felt like maybe they had figured out how to play together. It doesn't feel like that's happening anymore. You know, Caicedo still has his moments where he looks solid defensively, but for the most part, he's starting to have the gaps in his game that we saw last season. Fernandes obviously gets the goal, puts himself in a good position to be there and just sort of let it hit off of him. But outside of that, I don't really remember him doing much of anything going forward. And again, just like with Cucurella, what do we have past them? Dewsbury Hall? Ooh, that's scary for the other teams to see Kieran Dewsbury Hall out there. But I think that's telling, though, that you probably needed to make a sub there. I'm pretty sure the only sub he made was Sancho coming on for Nkunku. I mean, obviously, Tosin came on for Chalobah, but that was forced because of injury. But as far as changing the game, one sub. And did nothing to change the game because we don't really have the options to, because the transfer team didn't do their jobs. But up into the front four, this is where you've got one shining bright point of yesterday's game and then three more duds. Nkunku, I already talked about him a bit. Don't know what else to say. He does not look like he wants to be here, and he doesn't look like he should be here anymore. Palmer, same as what I said in the Brighton review, he looks like he's losing interest. He looks like he just has no answers for the amount of pressure that he's under and the lack of help that he has around him. He just doesn't look like he knows how to handle it anymore. And it's funny because people are getting on social media now and I'm seeing it all. Oh, Palmer had another shit game, but nobody wants to talk about it. Here's the thing. What are we supposed to say? Yeah, Palmer's playing like crap right now. So's the rest of the team. He's a good player, and he is capable of changing certain matches on his own, but when he is so low on confidence and nobody else around him is helping him, it's kind of hard for one player to do that much. Last season, as much as people wanted to say it was Palmer FC, there were still a couple of players around him that were opening up the spaces for him to be able to perform. And on top of that, teams didn't know how good he was, so he had a little bit more space to do what he can do. Now, teams know who he is, so they put 2 or 3 players on him, and he has less help because Jackson's not in the team anymore. And without Jackson up there, now it's a lot easier to defend against Palmer. So it's like, what do you want? All the people that want to sit there and go, oh, nobody's talking about Palmer having a good game. What do you want to happen? Do you want him to be sold? Because that would be idiotic. But that's what it sounds like when people talk about Palmer's having a bad... Okay, so bench him for who? Who's going to go out there and do better than Palmer is? Nobody's playing well right now. We shouldn't sell him. The way the board is running things now, there's a very good chance they could sell him just to make a profit off of him. And then he could go tear it up for some club who's actually performing well and actually has a good team to surround him. I do not get that mentality, that current story that's popping up on social media. Anybody who's saying that stuff and is trying to over criticize Palmer and say he's the problem, I'm sorry, that's stupid. That is an idiotic stance to take because everybody is having issues. Everybody at the club is not performing right now. And the manager is not doing anything to help. The transfer team took away all of our backups so nobody can go out there and give Palmer a rest when he needs it. So what do you want to throw all the blame onto Palmer for? I'm so confused about that. And then Neto up top, and I do realize I said front 4. Now I realize that technically it was front 3 because Gusto was more so the right wing. Again, the one shining point that we had, and just because he was put in a position where he's more effective than the other guy that was in that position. So he caused more trouble. But that's about it. It was a slight positive that worked in the first half, but then as we typically do, we fade away into the second half. It was deja vu. We've seen it multiple times now. But even Sancho coming off the bench, I kind of hoped putting Sancho on that left side would give us a little something because we were seeing some joy. You know, we still had a couple of moments where maybe we could get a little break and maybe get lucky, but we just lacked that left side. You know, we had plenty of space down the right side. You know, Gusto, I guess to give him a little credit, he was providing the space out there. He just wasn't doing much with it. I guess I didn't go into much detail for him, but yeah, the real issue he had in his game was defensively. He was awful. But that left side was just absolutely barren. There was nothing coming from that side. So I thought maybe putting Sancho, an actual winger, out on the wing, maybe we'd get something out of it. But he came in and didn't really do much there. Didn't provide much creativity, much energy. It was just more of the same from him. And as much as people want to talk about nobody's criticizing Palmer, I don't hear a lot of people criticizing Sancho for the fact that since the first 2 or 3 games, he's not really done much. He's had like a few blips, a few flashes of brilliance every 3 or 4 games, and then he just fades away and doesn't do anything. So I don't know where that criticism is, but he definitely needs to come under the fire as well and get some motivation, because that Sancho that we saw that felt like he had a point to prove when he first came in, we don't see him anymore. He is not here. He is checked out. So at this point, like I said, there's not much else to say. It's kind of been the same thing. We finally saw some change, and that didn't change anything. The overall feel of the club is still the same. It's still start well, fade. We're here. We're just stuck here. I don't know where it's going to change, because the board, the transfer team, they have shown they're not willing to change what they're doing because they think it works. They think it's going to work eventually. You just got to give it time. That's the message. You just got to give it time. As long as that's the message, we're not going to see any change until they actually wake up, get their heads out of their asses and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe our idiot ideas don't work. Until we get to that point, we are just going to be here every year struggling and waiting for something to change. And the message is going to be the same. Just give it time. Trust the process. Trust the process. It's going to be okay. We'll get there eventually. No, we're not going to. Because you can't grow a club by buying young and just having them grow up and get older. You need the experienced players around you to be able to help you grow, to help turn you into great players when you get to your prime years. If you don't have that experience to help you grow, you're not going to learn. You're not going to get to that point where you then are an experienced player and you can play as an experienced player. And especially for these 3-4 years while everybody is growing up, we're going to be lucky to be in Europe. And again, some of these players that want to be in Europe, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to stick around and go, oh, okay, well, I'll stay here and wait out my career at this club that's going nowhere, just because, oh, maybe they will go somewhere eventually if I just stay here long enough. It's not going to happen. I think that's about it for this one. Like I said, I do expect us to win at home against Southampton. If not, you will see me here absolutely raging. I might throw something. I don't know. I need something that I can break, but is not super expensive. I'll think about it. We'll figure it out if we get to that point. But with all that being said, what were your thoughts on the game? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of reviews on there as well as some Let's Plays, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.